Once again, it's on. What is going on? We're here in the wee hours. We're bringing you content because we're dedicated, and we are kicking off our independent player portion of our cast here. Justice League 2022. It's about to go down. It is now Saturday morning, very early, and we are a day away from the draft. Last time we spoke, when we did our top 14, we wanted to really get into the individual defensive player. We're moving away from team defense. There's a lot of reasons why. The biggest reason why is when you start with points and you accumulate, then they go away, and then late game touchdowns and garbage time stuff. It really kind of mires up the matchup, in my opinion. And we talked about it, and we've kind of wrestled with it for a couple of years, and we decided that we're gonna plunge into the deep end. We're going into the abyss here. We're going into the realm of IDP. Mike, how do you feel about IDP?
I think it's good because it rewards what players you have. You're not getting penalized for some dorkwad that did screwed up your defense and just you get injuries and it's you're rewarded for what the player does. So whether the player's good or bad, you're going to get the points you deserve. So obviously you have to worry about injuries just like any other position. But if your guy stays healthy and he produces, you're going to get points, and you're not going to be penalized for something that has nothing to do with that player. So that's what I like about it. Obviously, it's a little more risky because you're talking about one player consistently performing. But as I told Rico, I think you're going to have to draft multiple defensive players. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just about getting a feel for what guy fits what you're kind of looking for in the point system with defensive players. But I think it's the best solution because it takes away all those negatives of you know points that doesn't even have anything to do. You're not basing it on a team performing. You're basing it on
Mm-hmm.
one player and the guy that you have.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know we've talked about this before, and I've had some discussions with some of the other guys about it over the years. We're year 7, and we've talked about this. We tried it out one year. It was muscle mano. It was in the middle. It was okay. Didn't get rave reviews. I don't think people necessarily hated it. But this year, as Mike can attest, we just spent some time going over the scoring settings, and I think we have it right. I really do. I think we have it right, and I think it's truly exciting because as a former corner safety, uh, I feel like the defense just gets disrespected in fantasy football, right? Because it's all about scoring touchdowns. It's all about throwing them, catching them, running them in, right? And that's great, but that's not football as we know it, right? And I know it's fantasy, but when you float it out there and you float out an IDP as a possibility, somebody like me, my wheels get to turning, and I'm thinking, well, how can we make an individual defensive player affect the outcome of a fantasy matchup that is congruent and it's proportional to how they affect the outcome on Sundays or Thursdays or
Mm-hmm.
Monday nights? Because a defensive player can literally wreck a game plan. Aaron Donald can wreck a game plan. Derwin James can wreck a game plan. Micah Parsons can wreck a game plan. They can rack up and change a game with a single play. And I think when we get into the scoring settings, you're going to see that is now in Justice League, and we're making that a reality and bringing it to fantasy football. I'm super excited about it. Mike, are you nervous to go over these scoring settings?
No, I'm not nervous. And the other thing I would add to that point is, I mean, how many times have you lost a week because some doofus took a kickback for a touchdown and it's not even defense? That's not even
Yeah.
defense. That's just a special teams freak play that a guy
Mm-hmm.
returns a kick for a touchdown. So you want your player, whether it's good or bad, whether he lose you the week or he wins you the week, you want it to be focused on the player that you have on your
Mm-hmm.
team, not a team that gets a fluky play that costs you a week where if he scores a touchdown, returns a kickback, you lose that week by like 5 points. And you want the player to whatever you have. And yes, the points are going to be explained, but at the same time, at least you know my player did good or my player didn't do good, and that's why I lost. That's it.
Yep. So with no further ado, let's hop right back, or let's not hop right back. Let's hop into it for the first time. Okay, we're taking the floaties off right? We're doggy paddle mode right here. There's a strong current, and we are in the middle of the abyss, the Bermuda Triangle. We're in the nether realm here, the land or the oceanic atmosphere of IDP. Let's go. All right, going over some of the top players here. Just some names again. Draft who you want to draft. These are just Yahoo projections based on our scoring settings. Micah Parsons is an absolute Jabberwocky. Like, he's a monster. He is Jason Voorhees, maskless. You don't want to look in his face because you may be running for the hills. He's that scary. He is coming in at 250 points fantasy. When I tinkered with the scoring system, there was no way, there was nothing under the sun. There was no bill that could be passed. There was no lobbying that could be done where there was not some degree of separation between Micah Parsons and everyone else. He is projected to be, IDP 1 on the year. So he's at 250 points. Shaquille Leonard, linebacker, Indianapolis Colts. They're keeping him off the PUP list. He's coming in at 242. When I did these scoring rankings, we're going to get into them in just a second, I measured it by representation at all three levels. I want defensive ends and D tackles to be represented, which they are here. I wanted linebackers, obviously, going to be represented as your second level of defense. But I did not want to disrespect the back end guys, the guys that are back there getting the passes defended on the sideline on 3rd and 18, giving the possession back to their team. So we've got representation all three levels here in our top 10 and our top 20. And I'm excited about it, and I think we're gonna get this right. So coming in number 3 is T.J. Watt with 228 points, roughly. Myles Garrett's 224 points. Trayvon Diggs coming in at 222 points. Then we've got Devin White, 210 or 211, call it 211. Aaron Donald's 210. Joey Bosa's 208. So we've got some D linemen back to back because Bosa's coming up right behind him. Nick type. Okay, so we got Joey. The Bosa brothers are back to back. 206, and then we dip down below the 200s. We've got Kevin Byard at 198, Justin Simmons at 195, Xavier Howard at 193. So we've got two safeties and then a corner coming up. So if we were to break this down in our top 14, like we did with our regular skill position players, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 back end guys, 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, 4 linebackers, and then I'm seeing probably more DNs and D tackles than anything else. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I guess you'll call Roquan Smith in there a linebacker, so give the linebackers another one. So anyway you cut it, you got all three levels of defense represented, and that's what I was really aiming to do here. Mike, do any of those names, aside from Micah Parsons, do any of those names stick out to you where you think they might outperform their ADP as it pertains to the IDP?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly TJ Watt is in there for sacks. So if you get sacks and you get strip sacks and you get turnovers, that's going to boost up these numbers are going to fluctuate. Yeah, Micah is up there, but it changes. It's going to be fluid as far as these numbers as the season goes on, depending on who forces the most turnovers and how much a high radius they get for what they do the best. So if you're a cornerback, you get a lot of picks. Obviously, if Diggs gets what he did last year, that's a really good guy to have because you're going to get a lot of turnovers and that's going to be a lot of points and he's going to be boosted up. And if T.J. Watt on the flip side, on the different position, if he gets a lot of sacks, but he also adds a lot of more fumbles to that sacks, that's going to increase him. So these numbers are going to fluctuate. While it looks like Micah's a clear number one, as we've seen in fantasy football. Once they play football and they get out there, stuff changes when guys are forcing more turnovers than the others. It's no guarantee that one guy is going to force more turnovers than the others, or he's going to add all the stuff together with sacks and fumble coverage and tackles.
Right.
So it's really just you have to go on a feel, just like with a player of what guy you feel the most comfortable with.
Yep, I agree with it. And again, these are projections. These are not taken into consideration, obviously, injuries or whatever have you. Defensive coordinators change, schemes change. Obviously, if you're going to really get into this and be mindful of the matchups, you're going to be paying attention to injuries on the opposing offensive line, what the tackle rating
Mm-hmm.
Football Focus has a lot of information there. So all that stuff's going to come into play. With no further ado, let's go into the actual rankings. And there's a reason why this is very heavily slated towards turnovers. If we just went straight up with tackles and assisted tackles, it would just be linebackers across the board, where whoever was the middle linebacker for whatever team, or the Sam or the Will, would just be, the guy here. So we tried to really be mindful of that, and I really spent some time here, and I would actually adjust the settings, and then I would see if I'm getting that 3-level representation in the IDP rankings. And I got it to a point where we went over the 3-level representation, and it's really heavily leaned towards turnovers. Like, you want a defender that's getting turnovers and getting sacks. And the way it shakes out, I'll just run this down. We're going to try to make this video 15 to 20 minutes instead of our standard hour. We just got so much content. We just can't stop. But we're going to try to have some self-control, because we need to get to bed and watch the Knowles play tomorrow. Solo tackle is going to be 0.5 points. Assisted tackle, that's going to be 0.25 points. They award tackle assists. Sometimes when they have the gang tackles, they'll award 3 or 4 people with an assisted tackle sometimes. So that's why we tried to, a guy gets a hand on a guy and they're giving him an assisted tackle. So that's going to be nominal. Here's where we get into the stuff where's your meat and taters, okay, and maybe even your cranberry sauce and stuffing. All right, sack, 8 points. Interception, 10 points. A fumble forced, 5 points. A fumble recovered, 3 points. I wanted to make the fumble recovery a little bit less, because a lot of times guys will force the fumble and then recover it, or guys will just be in the right place at the right time and they'll just happen to hop on the ball. So I don't think that's as worthy of points as a forced fumble, and obviously not as much as an interception and a sack. Defensive touchdown, we're going to go with 12 points on that. They're so rare. We wanted to do 6, but it was very hard to scale it and make the explosive plays match up in the totality of the points. So defensive touchdowns are going to be pretty heavy, 12 points. Safety, 5 points. Pass defended, 5 points. Here's why. Because if we don't give corners the credit for the passes defended, they will not factor in. And again, it was very important to me to have 3-level representation. So if you get a corner who's out there getting 2 or 3 passes defended a game, he's going to rack up some points and have a nice day. A lot of times the great corners don't get tried as much until the fourth quarter when it's winning time. So they have to have a way to kind of make up for points, because if they're not getting tried, they're not going to get an opportunity to get tackles. But it's not representative of how great they are at their respective position. If they're on an island and taking a guy away, when the quarterback finally decides to go to that island, be it Ramsey or whatever, you should get appropriate points for holding the line and defending the pass there. So that's why we went with 5 points for the pass defended. Block kick, 5 points. This is going to be a key one, because a lot of your starting defensive linemen, if they are long and have the wingspan, which a lot of these guys do, they'll put them on that field goal block, and you could get yourself some 5 points right there if they're able to get their paws on one of those footballs. Tackle for loss, 3 points. Turnover return yards, it's going to be 10 yards per point, and an extra point return, we just made it 5 points. It's a pretty rare deal, but I thought it should be weighted more than 2. So does anything stick out to you, Mike, that popped out to you when I was reading off those point totals?
Just turnovers. Go back to turnovers, and and just what you do with those turnovers. Not just if you pick it off. It's like what do you do after the play? If you're returning that thing for like 50, 60 yards and a touchdown, that's a massive day. I mean, that can change your whole momentum as far as what you're going to do winning. So turnovers and what you do with turnovers is a big deal. And then I think I think it's great the way it's weighted with defensive backs, because they don't get a lot of chances. It's like they're going against elite receivers, and a lot of times these guys don't get tried, so the good ones don't really get the opportunity. So to have that point total there, if your guy is heavy in pass deflections or picks, then certainly you're gonna rack up on totals. So I think it's mainly the focus where it should be, which is turnovers. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for. And then if you have a guy that gets a ton of sacks and tackles, then you're going to rack up there, and then maybe some forced fumbles. I think you're going to have a really good day. So what I like is there's a multiple way of how you can reach what you want, whether whoever you have, whether that's turnovers and fumbles or turnovers and strip sacks or turnovers and picks.
Mm-hmm.
You have a chance. And we've seen many times that defensive linemen, they come through and they get when they get turnovers, they take it in. They're the closest to the end zone, if you think about it. So they got a chance to, make big plays and turn it around.
Yep, I agree with you. In addition, and to ornament our description of the scoring settings, and in addition, and also to ornament our discussion of the top players, I think we went over top 14, not as specifically as we did for the skill guys, but we just kind of listed the guys there, and we talked about the representation on all three levels of the defense there. I've actually crafted up some math because I want everybody to get an understanding of how points will be accrued, and I've gotten, I think it's like 6 or 7 scenarios here, and including a box score total for a defender. Let's just call him, Joe Blow. And I want to go over that with you now. So if you get a pick, and let's say Jalen Ramsey gets a pick and returns it 20 yards, that's 10 points for the pick, and that's going to be 2 points for the total yards because you're getting a point every 10 yards. So that's a 12-point play. It's a big deal. It's a big play. And it is a big play in the game, and it's a big play for a player because guys aren't getting 20 picks in a season. If they're having a great year, they're going to be right around 10. So we can't weight it as we weigh, a standard touchdown for like a quarterback, right? Because that's so standard for them to score and to throw a touchdown. But it's rare for a defender to get a pick. It's hard to do. So that's why we have it weighted that way. So that's a 12-point play. Let's take, for example, a sack fumble. So this is where you are getting the sack and you're forcing the fumble. And so if I go to the scoring settings, I have it as a 16-point play. So a sack would be 8 points. It's going to be a tackle that's going to be in the backfield. So you're going to get the 3 points there. And then you're also going to get the kicker for the solo tackle. And when you add it all up, I've got 16 points here. I'm trying to see if I'm missing something because the TFL plus the solo tackle would be 3.5 points, plus the sack is going to be 8. That's going to be 11.5 points, actually. So correct that. It's going to be an 11.5-point play. Now, if you recover the fumble, that's where the extra 3 is coming from. So that will be 8. So actually, stand by. A sack fumble is going to be 8 points for the sack. Let's say you force the fumble and you recover it. That's another 8 points. That's where I'm getting the 16. Sorry, I had to go over that again. So again, a sack, 8 points. And then the forced fumble and the recover of the fumble will be another 8 points combined because it's 5 plus 3. So that's a 16-point play. That's a big deal. If your defensive end comes off the end and he blasts the tackle and gets to the quarterback, sacks him, strips him, and recovers, that's a huge play. It's rare. It doesn't happen that often. So it's rewarded, appropriately to scale. Let's say Mike's favorite corner, Trayvon Diggs, let's say he gets a pick 6 for 30 yards, okay? The pick is going to be 10 points itself, okay? There's that. The touchdown, pick 6, right? That's going to be 12 points. Now we're up to 22 points. So now he's going to get the yardage on top of that, which is going to be 30 yards would be 3 points. You're talking about a 25-point play. So a 30-yard pick 6 would be a 25-point play. How often are you seeing pick 6s? Not very often. It'd be the equivalent to Tyreek Hill scoring a couple touchdowns and having one of those 40 burgers, right? So that's how we've got that set up there. A fumble 6, it equates out to a 23.5-point play. So the pick 6 and the fumble 6 are very, very close. And now I just want to get into a box score total so people can kind of get a feel for what would be a big day. Let's say you have TJ Watt, and let's say TJ Watt has 10 tackles. That would equate to 5 points because he's getting a half point per tackle. Let's say he has 2 of those tackles are for loss. Well, that would be 6 points because you're getting a tackle for loss would be 3 points times 2 would be 6. Let's say he gets 1 pick. That's 10 points. Then let's say he gets a sack. So in totality, he would have 10 tackles. 2 tackles were for a loss, 1 pick, and 1 sack. He would have 29 points on the day. Now, to me, that's to scale because if an offensive player were to have, 10 catches and a touchdown and a couple 40-yard plays, he would be right around the 25 to 30-point range. And the way we have it set up, it is very, very equivalent to that for a defender to have 10 tackles, 2 for loss, a pick, and a sack. That's a heck of a day. You'd be writing home to mom if you had that kind of a day. And you're also going to be writing home to your fantasy manager, and he's going to be writing back to you and probably giving you a pay raise, something like Julio Rodriguez in Seattle right about now. So that's an example. We've gone over some simple examples like just a standard pick, just a standard safety, a sack fumble, a 30-yard pick six, equivalent fumble six. We've gone over a box score for the day. We've gone over the players list. All this information is there. You guys can go look at it in the settings. Again, I wanted to preach the 3 layers of representation on the defense. We've got that there. So it's all out there. Very excited for the IDP. Where are we sitting at time? We're right at 20 minutes. We promised that we wouldn't be super long. It's getting late. We're a day away from the draft. Getting super excited here. And now for the first time in Justice League franchise history, you will be fielding an IDP that can literally make or break your week. So draft accordingly. Mike, you got any parting thoughts?
I think you put it in, really explained everything, which is basically, guys, you can get points in a number of ways with a number of positions, whether it's defensive end, defensive tackle, cornerback, safety. Like, some of the best safeties get a lot of picks. So just take your time, make sure, kind of study what we talked about, and just get the guy that fits what you want. And if you, like I said, the point total is weighted with every position to equal out the same thing if you have a big day. So it really just depends on the guy.
Yeah. And my final note for the day, and if you want to find a guy that fits everything, that guy. Yeah, so whoever drafts him, you're going to be set up pretty good. And there was literally no way to stop that. Micah Parsons is supposed to be a monster. So if you're into projections, Micah Parsons is your guy. And there's also some good ones behind him. But yeah, Micah Parsons. So if you take anything from this, Micah Parsons. You can say it backwards, Parsons Micah. He plays for the Cowboys. He's real good. He does pretty much everything. All right, guys, we're signing off. We will be back with you guys on Sunday. Sunday. Get ready. Cram. See y'all.